In the quiet village of Lower Ashford, a fire rages, trapping Eleanor Walker, a stubborn, prejudiced widow, in her own home. Saved by Marcus Green, a brave black firefighter, she wakes to a shocking truth that shatters her world. Furious and conflicted, Eleanor's journey from hate to redemption begins. What happens next will leave you speechless. A raw, powerful tale of courage, change, and the fires that burn within us all. Welcome to a story that hits hard and lingers long. The wind carried the faint scent of damp earth through Lower Ashford, a sleepy English village nestled in the rolling hills of Gloucestershire. Eleanor Walker stood at her kitchen window, her gnarled hands gripping the sink's edge as she watched the gray sky darken toward evening. At 78, she was a relic of the village, white-haired, sharp-tongued, and stubbornly rooted in the traditions of a bygone era. Her cottage, a stone-walled haven at the edge of town, had been her fortress for decades, its walls lined with faded photos of a husband long dead and a son who'd moved to London and rarely called. She'd lived her life by rules, her father's rules, the village's rules. Outsiders were suspect, change was the enemy, and people who didn't look like her were a quiet threat she'd never questioned. Lower Ashford was mostly white, mostly old, and Eleanor liked it that way. She'd mutter about those people taking over Bristol or Birmingham, her voice low but venomous, a habit she'd picked up from her parents and never shaken. Tonight, she shuffled to the stove, her slippers scuffing the worn linoleum. A pot of stew simmered, the gas flame flickering blue beneath it. She reached for a wooden spoon, her hands trembling slightly. Arthritis, she'd grumble, though she'd never see a doctor about it. The radio crackled in the background, a BBC presenter droning about the weather. She didn't notice the tea towel slip from the counter, landing too close to the flame. She didn't see the spark catch, the fabric igniting with a soft whoosh. By the time the smoke stung her nose, the fire had clawed up the curtains, a hungry orange beast swallowing her kitchen. Eleanor froze, her breath catching as the heat seared her face. "No, no," she croaked, stumbling back. The stew pot tipped, spilling grease that fed the flames higher. She grabbed the phone, her fingers fumbling with the buttons. But the line was dead, cut off months ago when she'd refused to pay the bill. Smoke thickened, choking her lungs, and she sank to her knees, the world blurring as panic took hold. The last thing she saw was the fire licking the ceiling before darkness swallowed her. Marcus Green hauled the hose over his shoulder, his boots pounding the gravel as the fire engine screeched to a stop outside the cottage. At 32, he was a 6-year veteran of the Gloucestershire Fire Service. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark skin glistening with sweat under his helmet. He'd grown up in Bristol, the son of Jamaican immigrants, and moved to the countryside for a quieter life. Though quiet wasn't what he got tonight. The call had come in from a neighbor spotting smoke, and Marcus's crew was first on scene. "Walker residence, elderly woman inside," his captain shouted over the roar of the blaze. Flames punched through the kitchen window, glass shattering outward. Marcus didn't hesitate. He yanked his mask into place, oxygen hissing, and charged through the front door, axe in hand. The heat hit like a wall, but he pushed forward, scanning the haze. He found her crumpled near the sink, her white hair stark against the blackened floor. "Got her," he yelled into his radio, dropping to one knee. She was light, frail, her pulse faint under his gloved fingers. He scooped her up, shielding her from falling debris as the ceiling groaned above. His partner, Tom, cleared a path, and Marcus burst back into the night air, laying her on the grass as paramedics swarmed. He ripped off his mask, gulping oxygen, his heart pounding from more than just the run. She'd been seconds from gone. "She's breathing," a medic called, and Marcus exhaled, wiping soot from his brow. The fire was under control now, his crew dousing the last of it, but he stayed close until the ambulance doors shut and sped off toward Gloucester Royal Hospital. Eleanor woke to the beep of machines and the sting of an IV in her arm. Her throat burned, her chest ached, but she was alive. The hospital room was sterile, white, a stark contrast to the chaos she remembered. A nurse bustled in, young, blonde, brisk. "Mrs. Walker, you're lucky. The firefighters got you out just in time." "Firefighters?" Eleanor rasped, her voice a dry croak. "Who?" "Marcus Green," the nurse said, checking her chart. "He carried you out. Brave man. Ran right into that mess." Eleanor's mind churned, sluggish from smoke and sedatives. "Green? That's an English name?" The nurse smiled faintly. "He's local. Black guy, tall. Real hero type." The words hit like a slap. Eleanor's eyes widened, her hands clutching the blanket. "A black man? Saved me." Her stomach twisted, a sick mix of gratitude and something uglier. Disbelief, denial, the old venom rising like bile. She turned her face to the wall, silent, as the nurse left. It couldn't be. Not one of them. By morning she was discharged, sent home to a cottage half ruined but standing. The kitchen was a charred shell, the rest smoke-damaged but salvageable. Neighbors dropped by with casseroles and pitying looks, chattering about the hero firefighter. Eleanor nodded stiffly, her lips a thin line. She couldn't reconcile it. The image of a black man risking his life for her clashed with decades of whispered slurs and locked doors. She'd thank him, she decided, because manners demanded it, but that was all. Marcus showed up 2 days later, off-duty, in jeans and a fleece jacket. He'd heard she was home and wanted to check in. Standard for him, though he'd never admit how often he replayed rescues in his head, wondering if he'd done enough. He knocked, and Eleanor opened the door, her gray eyes narrowing as they landed on him. "Mrs. Walker?" he said, his voice warm but cautious. "I'm Marcus Green. Just wanted to see how you're holding up." She stared, taking in his height, his skin, the quiet strength in his stance. "You're the one," she said flatly. "The firefighter." "Yes, ma'am." He shifted, hands in his pockets. "Glad you're okay. That was a close call." Her jaw tightened. "I suppose I owe you a thank you. So, thank you." The words were clipped, forced, like they burned her tongue. Marcus nodded, sensing the wall between them. "No need. It's my job. You need anything, though, repairs, help, just let me know." "I'll manage," she snapped, then shut the door before he could reply. Inside, she leaned against it, her heart racing. He'd saved her life, and she'd barely looked at him. Shame flickered, but she smothered it with old excuses. "He's different, they all are. It's not my fault I feel this way." That night, she couldn't sleep. The memory of smoke, of helplessness, mingled with Marcus's face. Calm, steady, risking everything for her. She tossed, her mind a battlefield. By dawn, she was angry. Not at him, but at herself. At the knot of hate she'd carried so long, it felt like part of her bones. The turning point came a week later. Eleanor hobbled to the village hall for the monthly council meeting, her cane tapping the cobblestones. She'd always gone, a fixture in the back row, grumbling about taxes or newfangled rules. Tonight, They honored the fire crew, Marcus among them, with plaques for bravery. He stood at the front, accepting his with a shy smile, while the room clapped. Eleanor sat rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. After, as folks milled about with tea and biscuits, she approached him, her steps slow but deliberate. "Mr. Green," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I was rude. Before. I didn't mean it." Marcus turned, surprised. "No harm done, Mrs. Walker. You'd been through a lot." "No," she said, sharper now. "It's not that. She faltered, then forced it out. "I didn't want it to be you, because of what you are, and that's wrong. I know it's wrong." The admission hung there, raw and jagged. Marcus's eyes softened, but he didn't flinch. "Takes guts to say that. Most don't." She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "You saved me, and I treated you like you were less. I'm sorry." He smiled faintly. "Apology accepted. We all carry stuff we didn't choose. What matters is what you do with it." That conversation cracked something open in Eleanor. Over the next weeks, she sought him out, first with a pie as a peace offering, then with questions about the fire, about his life. Marcus was patient, sharing stories of growing up in Bristol, of slurs shouted from cars, of proving himself in a job where some still whispered he didn't belong. She listened, really listened, and the knot inside her began to loosen. Months later, Eleanor was different. She volunteered at the village food bank, her cane a familiar sight as she packed boxes beside people she'd once ignored. Immigrants, single moms, folks of every shade. She spoke at a council meeting, her voice shaking but firm, pushing for a youth program to keep kids off the streets. "Like those boys who hurt that firefighter's family," she said, meaning Marcus's cousin, mugged years back in a hate crime he'd mentioned once. Marcus noticed. One crisp afternoon, he found her planting bulbs outside the rebuilt cottage, her hands dirty but steady. "You're a force, Mrs. Walker," he said, grinning. "Village won't know what hit it." She straightened, brushing soil from her coat. "Call me Eleanor, and it's about time I did something useful. You showed me that." He laughed. "I just put out a fire. You're the one rebuilding." She smiled, a real one, rare and bright. "Maybe we both are." The village buzzed with her change. Some praised it, others sneered, calling her a bleeding heart behind her back. But Eleanor kept going, her redemption a quiet rebellion against the past. She and Marcus formed an odd pair, her hobbling beside him at community events, him checking in when winter storms hit. Lower Ashford shifted just a little because of them. Yet one night, as Eleanor locked her door, a rock sailed through her window, shattering glass across the floor. A note was tied to it, "Traitor," in angry scrawl. She stood there, trembling, then called Marcus. He arrived, cleaned up, and stayed until she stopped shaking. "They're scared," he said. "Change does that." "Will it stop?" she asked, her voice small. "Not soon," he admitted, "but we don't either." The cottage stood firm, a light in the dark. Eleanor kept planting, kept speaking, Marcus at her side. Beyond the village, the world churned with the same old hate. Someone, somewhere, faced it still. The question lingered, sharp and unanswered. How many fires would it take to burn it away? And who would carry the torch next?